U.S. scientists warn Zika virus could become an explosive pandemic. This, as the World Health Organization estimates there could be up to 4 million cases of Zika in the Americas over the next year. So far, the CDC has confirmed 31 travel-associated cases across 11 states in the U.S.
Brazil is fighting the spread of Zika virus by trying to control its mosquito population. So far, the Zika virus has not been found in any mosquitoes in the U.S., but the types of mosquitoes that could potentially carry the virus are found in this country. In fact, in warmer months, those mosquitoes can be found in regions where 60% of Americans live. That's about 200 million people.
The president is now calling for swift action against the Zika virus. It's been linked to cases of brain damage in newborn babies.
President Obama has emphasized the need to develop a vaccine for the spreading mosquito-borne virus. Travel advisories have also put increasing pressure on tourism operators in the Latin American countries.
The World Health Organization is setting up a Zika virus emergency team after what's been described as an explosive spread of this virus. Laura Engel joins us live from our New York City newsroom with the latest. Laura?
Hi, Jenna. Well, the Zika outbreak is growing at such an alarming rate. This emergency committee is being asked to figure out how to best deal with an international response. And in the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention giving us an update this hour is as to what is happening here. Now, the virus transmitted through infected mosquitoes is connected to a neurological disorder that causes some babies to be born with abnormally small heads. It's a condition known as microcephaly. The World Health Organization, which is meeting today in Geneva over the issue, is now saying it expects the Zika virus to spread to 3 or 4 million cases around the globe. The general director of the organization told executive board members today the virus is something that they've seen in the past.
Last year, the virus was detected in the Americas, where it is now spreading explosively. As of today, cases have been reported in 23 countries and territories in the region. The level of alarm is extremely high.
You might have heard people talking about universal health coverage, but what does it really mean? Think about it this way. What do you need to get, be, and stay healthy? Can you get help from a well-trained health worker? Can you get treatment that helps you get better and is safe? Can you get the medicines and other health products you need? Who will pay for it? Are there policies in place to ensure the services you need are available to you, your family, and your community next time and every time? And does your government have accurate information about the whole system so they can make the right decisions to keep everything working the way it should? Good health needs people, services, products, finances, policies, and information. And it needs all of them to work together, even in times of crisis. And good health systems don't just treat sick people. They help to promote healthy living and prevent people from falling ill in the first place. The World Health Organization is working around the world so that all people and communities receive the quality services they need and are protected from health threats without suffering from financial hardship. That's what we call universal health coverage. So, here's to health, for you and for everyone.
important health alert. The Pinellas County Health Department is taking an aggressive approach to stop the spread of chickenpox at Plum Elementary School in Clearwater. They're telling parents with kids who have not been vaccinated to keep them at home.
Dia, that's right. And any child who is not vaccinated who comes to Plum Elementary School will be isolated, and the school will call mom and dad to come and pick them up. So far, there have been 8 confirmed cases of the chickenpox here at the elementary school, and the majority of those cases, those students were not vaccinated, either for religious or medical reasons. The other children who haven't been vaccinated, they're being told to stay home for 21 days. That's the time it takes for symptoms to begin showing.
This is the first line of defense against an epidemic that has swept through Southeast Asia. Teams of local officials armed with mosquito killer spraying machines fan out daily around Bangkok in an attempt to eliminate mosquito breeding sites. Last year, Thailand saw 140,000 infection cases, the highest since a mega outbreak of 170,000 in 1987. Officials recorded 126 deaths. The most notable was TV actor Trisadi Sahatwong, who died after developing a series of complications from the virus. His death made the public realize that dengue does not only affect those living in remote areas.
More people are moving to the capital. That's why it's worse than the provinces or small towns. It's spreading because of urbanization and lack of mosquito control.
Thailand's Public Health Ministry is expecting dengue cases to rise by over 16% this year. The reason for the swell is simple. Mosquitoes have more places to breed now that chemical spraying is less effective, and population clusters give the disease areas to propagate. For many years in Thailand, dengue fever was considered a disease that only affected children, but now most of the new cases reported are young adults.
Ukrainian Health Minister Alexander Kvitashvili said the country is now experiencing a flu epidemic with 83 confirmed fatal cases. He specified that the epidemic threshold surpassed 18 out of 24 regions in the country. According to official figures, between early October 2015 and the end of January this year, more than 2.6 million cases of flu have been reported across Ukraine, indicating that the illness affected about 6% of the country's population. Earlier, Ukrainian Health Ministry said the vast majority of the reported influenza cases in the country were caused by H1N1 strain, the so-called swine flu. To prevent the spread of the infection, most schools and kindergartens were closed across the East European country.
This story starts with a conspiracy theory, but ends with just plain fact. First, the conspiracy theory is that the U.S. government created Lyme disease. Lyme is an autoimmune disease that can cause a wide range of debilitating, hard-to-pin-down effects on the body. It can start with fever, headache, and other flu-like symptoms, and then if it goes untreated, it can get a lot worse, messing up memory, causing inflammation of the brain and spinal cord. You can go blind from it. The longer it goes untreated, the longer, more brutal the list of ailments it can cause. And for a long time, doctors didn't even want to diagnose Lyme, let alone treat it. That's where the conspiracy comes in. Lyme disease has been around since the 1970s, and it's named after Lyme, Connecticut, because that's where it first showed up. And that's right near Plum Island, which hosted the government's Animal Disease Center. There's lots of theories about how the government was using that center to conduct nefarious experiments on animals and also on ticks. Lyme is transmitted through ticks, and it magically first appeared right near Plum Island. And for decades, the medical community and government refused to even acknowledge Lyme was real. Add to that the fact that the CDC is now studying Lyme as a possible bioterrorism agent, and you get a pretty tight conspiracy theory that the government created Lyme disease. So that's the conspiracy. Now let's get to the plain fact. New research published in the Journal of Medical Entomology reveals that there has been a 320% increase in the number of counties in the Northeast U.S. that are considered high risk for Lyme. And overall,
More than 45% of all American counties now have ticks that carry Lyme. That's almost half the country. They're just everywhere now. When 20 years ago, they were only right around Plum Island, pretty much. Now there's no doubt its reach is spreading. But at least now doctors aren't as reluctant to diagnose it. Currently, around 300,000 people are diagnosed with Lyme every year. At least now it's being acknowledged as real by the medical community, so people who get bit by an infected tick have a better chance of catching it early and containing its effects. So who knows if the conspiracy theory is real or not? The bottom line is the fact that Lyme-carrying ticks are now spreading is definitely real.
Seattle is in a state of emergency. The mayor declared it in November, said he should have even done it sooner. Last night's shootout shows why. 2 people were killed, 3 more wounded at a homeless encampment. The mayor says no large American city can deal with a large homeless crisis without state and federal partners' help. Former Reagan economic advisor Art Laffer is with me now. Art, great to have you here. What do you think of Seattle Mayor Ed Murray's plea? That is to say, big cities need state help and federal help to combat homelessness.
Yeah, and the state help and federal help is not coming from spending money. Honestly, the reason why we have homelessness in part, I mean, obviously there's some people who are mentally ill and other reasons, but the growth in homelessness is really because of a bad economy and because of bad city, bad state, and bad country economic policies. And when you have a long-term decline like we've had in the U.S. over the past, what is it, it's almost 14 years, when you have it like that, you're going to get real problems like this. And they're not soluble by spending more money or by having homeless shelters. I mean, I think New York spends something like $17,000 per year per homeless person.
In the rate of STDs like never before. Sexually transmitted diseases such as gonorrhea and syphilis are now topping the charts just a decade after the city thought it had these health problems under control. Now, experts in the field are blaming the popularity of online dating and so-called hookup apps for the sharp rise of such public health crises. More than 54,000 are infected with chlamydia, 15,000 with gonorrhea, and more than 5,000 with syphilis. That's according to the county health department. But who is most at risk? Medical professionals say it's primarily millennials, specifically those under the age of 25. They're the highest incident rate, with the millennial females to be particular. Now, as the long-known rule goes that women can often carry STDs without ever showing any symptoms. Now, that's not to say that this is only a female problem or a millennial problem, but rather this is an alarming public health issue, not only for Los Angeles either, but across the entire country, as the rate of STDs in all major cities across the states have risen with the advent and soaring popularity of these online dating apps. Now, for the City of Angels, the County of Los Angeles, where more than 12 million people call home, there are only 12 public STD clinics to serve all of those people. So part of the surge can be blamed on the hard-to-reach and limited locations of these testing facilities.
We start tonight with the never-ending story out of Flint, Michigan that has captured the attention of the country. Water contamination is now on the minds of every American in light of the developments in Michigan. The states of Alabama, Louisiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Indiana, they're all reporting extensive exposure to lead poisoning, in some cases greater than what has been measured in Flint, Michigan. And now many want more reporting on the issue and more regulation, especially at the federal level. So how safe is our water tonight? For more, let's turn to our newsroom and turn to Simone Del Rosario in our newsroom for more on this story. Simone, other states now are reporting some high levels. What does this mean? How did we get to this point?
Well, if there's one thing, Ed, about this disaster in Flint, it's that it's drawing attention to the issue nationwide and causing a lot more people to take a closer look at their drinking water. You mentioned several states where children may have lead poisoning at higher rates than Flint. Here's a look at those counties. At the top, Houston County, Alabama, tested 12 children for lead poisoning in 2014. 7 of them came back positive. I know it's a small sample size, but still, that's 58%. Fact is, though, we still know so little about lead poisoning on a national level, and that's because only half of the country's counties even report lead poisoning data to the CDC. It's actually not required.
News alert now. Mid-air mystery. A plane forced to turn around when passengers and crew started passing out at 30,000 feet. Patricia Stark is here with the latest. Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning, Heather. Yeah, it was a really scary situation for the 188 people on board that plane. The American Airlines flight was heading from London to Los Angeles. About 2.5 hours into the flight, a flight attendant suddenly collapsed. The plane turned around over Iceland and headed back to London. One passenger says the crew started asking if any doctors were on board.
There was a lot of commotion and they immediately threw the lights on, and then maybe 5 minutes later they announced that 7 of the 13 flight attendants on board had either passed out or were too sick to fulfill their duties.
Several ambulances met the plane after the emergency landing at Heathrow Airport. In addition to those 7 attendants, at least 3 passengers also got sick. Paramedics weren't allowed on board until air tests were done. Now, all of them were later evaluated on the tarmac and released. Officials tested the cabin air and checked luggage, but they didn't find anything. An American Airlines spokesman tells Fox News the plane is still being inspected. Now, most passengers are already on their way to Los Angeles, and the airline is working to book flights for the rest. It's still not clear, though, what caused that illness. Heather.
Wow, that is so frightening. Unbelievable.
Parenting alert. It's about that latest viral trend that could put your kids in danger, called the duct tape challenge. It nearly killed one teen. And Nightline's Juju Chang here to explain. Hey, Juju.
Hey, George, you're a parent, and you know what? This is a recipe for potential disaster. Take a common household item, in this case, duct tape, add a bunch of teenagers looking for a thrill or a bunch of likes online, and voila, the duct tape challenge, which then invokes every parent's tired rant. It's all fun and games until somebody nearly gets killed.
At first glance, it seems harmless, yet the latest viral challenge among teens attracting millions of clicks, turning dangerous. The duct tape challenge, popping up all over the internet, wraps a person in duct tape and challenges them to escape. In most cases, sitting in a chair, but not always.
Now I just regret doing that challenge that day.
14-year-old Skylar Fish took the challenge with his friends earlier this month, standing up.
I wanted to try it because I thought, oh, it might be fun, but now I know it's not a good idea.
But Skylar's head hit the concrete, causing a brain aneurysm, life-threatening injuries requiring 48 staples, and maybe costing him an eye.
I'm so thankful everything played out the way it did after the accident happened, because if it didn't, I wouldn't have my son right now.
It's not the first dangerous challenge to become a fad. Remember the cinnamon challenge? Consuming a tablespoon of ground cinnamon in 60 seconds without fluid, which some doctors say can cause long-term, even permanent lung damage. And the Kylie Jenner challenge, prompting teens to suck their lips into small glass containers, despite her protests, risking bruising and injury in the hopes of creating fuller, more Kylie Jenner-like lips. Skylar hopes his near-death experience will prevent others from putting themselves in a sticky situation.
There are literally tens of thousands of these videos on YouTube, and I was surfing around and found adults doing the challenge for charity. But Skylar's mom is trying to warn everybody, stop and think.
lot of terrible weather here on the East Coast, but out in California and the West Coast been hit by El Nino storms, which has caused a state of emergency. And we have some drone video. Check this out. These apartment buildings are teetering on the verge of disaster. And ABC's Neil Karlinski is out in Pacifica with the latest on this. Good morning, Neil.
Michael, good morning. We're up on top of that bluff. This is as close as we can get and stay safe, and here's why. Look at the edge. The pavement just crumbled away. Another 20 feet used to go out there, all of it falling over the edge over just the last 2 weeks. This morning, El Nino's fury caught on camera. Drone footage shows a chunk of this bluff in the city of Pacifica shearing off, leaving an apartment building dangling precariously. Residents told to leave immediately, their balconies right over the crumbling cliffs. Take a look at this. You can see where it's cracking away right outside. I don't even feel comfortable standing here, to be honest. The city in a state of emergency, up and down its coastline, pounding waves and powerful rains wreaking havoc, damaging a pier and opening this sinkhole. Engineers scrambling to fortify the sandstone bluffs with boulders, rods, and concrete from the beach below. Too late for this home, the ground under the patio crumbled away. Pictures from before this season's storms show just how much erosion there's been.
It's going really fast, really fast.
Even so, many of the people evacuating this apartment building this morning say they don't want to go.
Guys will have to physically drag me out. I'm not leaving, my neighbors aren't leaving either.
Tens of thousands of fish have frozen to death in coastal areas in southwest China's Guangxi-Zhuang Autonomous Region following the worst cold snap to hit China in decades. Zheng Liangbin, who works at a fishery in Guangxi's city of Qinzhou, has hired 10 people to help him salvage dead tilapia from his pond. The fish have frozen solid. Zheng said the cold snap caused him to lose 30 tons of tilapia, worth over $30,000 US.
Extreme weather at this hour, Florida taking a beating. Multiple tornadoes reported in Broward County, including an EF1, winds up to 100 miles per hour. Dramatic images the moment of impact at this college, a tractor trailer flipping over. Cars piled on top of one another, people hiding beneath underpasses, a woman inside her car as it was thrown across the highway. Authorities saying tonight it is a miracle no one died, and ABC's Philip Mena is on the scene.
Tornado warnings just after 9 a.m.
Might want to get under the bridge, Kyle.
Kyle McAfee and his father in their truck caught in the middle of it.
We're in the tornado.
Nowhere to go, taking refuge under this overpass. Winds up to 100 miles an hour tearing through the college campus nearby.
There was like a tidal wave of clouds of water.
This was the scene when it was over. A car dropped on top of another. This truck flipped on its side. Roofs shredded off buildings nearby. Trees downed.
I seen that tree just snap like it was a toothpick. I'm still shaking up. I mean, I didn't even know which way to go.
Back on that highway, this car lifted right up from the southbound lane, landing northbound. The driver still inside.
That was the one minor injury that we had, so we're very fortunate.
And David, you can see what the storm did to this gated community. Trees ripped out of the ground and that roof behind me partially blown off. And David, tonight families here are bracing for more severe weather.
The doomsday clock, it remains unchanged. It's at 3 minutes to midnight, but it's clear the world has gotten demonstrably more dangerous. And experts, well, they're warning of a global catastrophe could be imminent. Joining me now, Captain Chuck Nash and Yodi Tawaldi. Captain Nash, let me go to you, because it's not just the doomsday clock. Other entities that sort of watch world peace, world conflict, over the last couple of years, the world has gotten extraordinarily much more violent and much more threatening to everybody. What do you make of it all?
Well, I think a lot of people are focused on the right things, which are issues with the Middle East, terrorism, things like that. And then you've got people who are totally distracted by the little wild squirrel, worried about global warming when that has nothing to do with anything. The real issue is if Iran becomes the dominant player in the Gulf and Iran gets a nuclear weapon through working with North Korea, What will they do in the Gulf? Will they try to incite violence in the countries, their Arab neighbors, where there are Shia populations? And if so, does that kick off a nuclear arms race in the Gulf? Because we may be fracking a lot of oil and we may have found a lot of oil elsewhere, but if that Gulf turns into a war zone, that's going to change the world economy. You add into that the potential for cyber. Israel right now, their power grid is under a massive cyber attack that they're trying to deal with. All of these things come to fruition when there's no fear of acting out. Our enemies no longer fear us.
Iran's Navy has warned a U.S. warship to leave the area where it is holding a military drill codenamed Velayat 94.
You are entering Velayat tactical exercise area. For your safety, leave the area as soon as possible.
Iran's Navy Commander Rear Admiral Habibullah Sayyari says the American vessel left the area right after receiving the warning. The commander said the U.S. warship entered the area to gather information on tactics used by Iranian forces during the drills. A U.S. fighter jet also received a similar warning from the Iranian side and left the area. Iran is conducting naval maneuvers in the Sea of Oman and the northern part of the Indian Ocean. The drills cover a vast area and will last until January the 31st.
Russia poses the biggest threat to the United States in the world, U.S. Air Force Chief Deborah Lee James said on Wednesday. The United States and its NATO allies have been accusing Russia of violating the sovereignty of Ukraine and acting aggressively toward neighbors in the Baltics and Eastern Europe. Russia has denied the accusations of its alleged military involvement in Ukraine. Moscow had repeatedly warned against increased United States and NATO military build-up and exercises along Russia's borders.
After video was released by the regional wing of ISIL warned of local attacks, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak says the militant poses a very real threat to the country.
This is a challenge that faces us all around the world. We are far from immune to this danger, wherever we are, and that includes us in Malaysia.
Malaysian police said on Sunday they had arrested 7 members of an Islamic State cell who were planning attacks across the country. The Philippines is facing an imminent threat from ISIL's followers as well. Footage recently uploaded online show Islamic State training as well as different armed groups from the country's south coming together to pledge allegiance to the organization. Meanwhile, Indonesian and Singaporean officials meeting in Singapore for security talks say international cooperation is key to counteract Islamic State.
We believe again that we cannot do it alone, but what we can do is to establish close cooperation, then we can minimize threat, ISIS threat in this region. That's what we believe.
Europe's police agency has given a stark warning that more deadly attacks by Islamic State across the continent are likely.
The so-called Islamic State has a willingness and a capability to carry out further attacks in Europe. All of the national authorities across Europe are working to prevent that from happening.
The Europol chief's words follow a recently published report suggesting that there's every reason to expect more attacks. The agency emphasized Islamic State's greater ability to operate on a global level. The report also stressed a lack of credible evidence to predict where or when the terrorist group will strike next. But on Sunday, ISIL released a video celebrating the militants responsible for the Paris attacks back in November and the potential targets. The jihadists threaten more acts of terror, showing images of London and British Prime Minister David Cameron, among other top politicians, with gun sights on their faces. Here's what people in the British capital told us about the threats.
It does worry me. I try not to use the tube, I try not to use the bus, I try to stay off the main roads, but I have to go to work every day.
I think you just have to be cautious, and it doesn't stop me from doing things. Definitely doesn't stop me from doing things, but you just have to kind of be aware and alert.
They threaten everyone. It's like Nostradamus. You predict everything and then some of it comes true. It doesn't change what I do. I keep doing my normal everyday everything.
There have been a number of warnings and road closures since the first Paris attack, and it's been quite scary, but yeah, I'm always a bit worried what's going to happen.
France was also mentioned as a target in Islamic State's video. President Hollande had said on Monday that he'll prolong the state of emergency and also reiterated that France will not give any ground to terrorists.
And the Paris schools received practically identical calls between 10:20 a.m. and 11:20 a.m. local time on Tuesday. Students at Charlemagne, Fenelon and Montaigne, Condorcet, Henry IV and Louis le Grand schools were moved to secure areas where police carried out searches, and alerts were lifted for all 6 schools by the end of the afternoon. In Britain, 4 London schools also received calls. 6 schools in the Birmingham area in central England and 4 in Cornwall, southwest England, reported similar incidents, and they were evacuated as a precaution. Local police officers have been sent to the schools to carry out checks, and investigation is underway to find the person or people responsible.
In the wake of the sexual attacks in Germany, the government has promised to toughen its stance on asylum seekers accused of crimes. However, a former German policeman's revealed that migrant gangs don't fear criminal charges as they've no effect on their asylum applications.
What happened is that we got on New Year's Eve like a vast amount of sexual assaults. And well, most of them were committed by an intense offenders group that we are dealing with since several years. And the thing is, as our prosecution is not really working properly, the penalty they get doesn't really influence their asylum process, you know? And so they kind of move fearlessly.
Dominic Lanson teaches 10 Krav Maga self-defense classes a week, and he's got a waiting list for more. After New Year's Eve, he tells me the numbers for my class just skyrocketed. The mass assaults at Cologne's train station on New Year's Eve by what police describe as a, quote, mob of North African men has unnerved the German public, tapping into deep fears of a potential refugee crime wave. 12 of 16 German states have now reported assaults over the New Year's weekend, similar to what happened in Cologne. And some Germans are now taking steps to feel safer. Even across the country in Berlin, gun stores are sold out. Pavel Sverdlov has empty shelves and 1 can of pepper spray left. He sold in 3 days what he used to sell in a month.
It's changed which people are coming to us. So normally our clients are the men between 18 and 40. But now a lot of women are coming to us and a lot of older people.
Women make up most of Dominic's students in class. The class is half street smarts, half street combat, role-playing on how to avoid unsafe situations. And if you decide to fight your way out, Dominic says, hit hard and fast, disable your attacker and run.
A young woman working in a centre for underage refugees has been stabbed to death in western Sweden. With more details, here's Harry Fear.
Swedish police saying that a young refugee was responsible for this horrific incident. And the 22-year-old female was a member of staff. She has now succumbed to her serious wounds. We understand she sustained them in some kind of altercation or brawl that took place at this refugee centre. And it's a small shelter, we understand, set up at the end of last year specifically for unaccompanied minors, those between the ages of 14 and 17 years old. And now this young asylum seeker is in custody. We don't know yet his name or even age or background, but authorities there in Sweden trying to understand if this was a manslaughter case or a motivated murder. They're saying today that that's difficult though, because there is a language barrier with the kid. He doesn't speak Swedish. And police also saying more widely that they're being stretched in general too. A spokesperson saying that they're having to respond to many disturbances in refugee reception centres, taking up sometimes significant resources in a way that they just weren't seeing 6 months ago in the country.
There's also a warning that Stockholm's central train station is overrun by migrant gangs. That's according to a leaked police report in the Swedish media, where one officer claims that underage migrants who are primarily from Morocco are involved in crime and assaults against girls. Sweden was outraged recently when an attack on a woman with 2 children at a metro station was caught on security cameras. The woman confronted the man when he was trying to steal from an elderly woman. The would-be robber then turned on her, striking her face before running back to spit at her. That attacker has since been branded Sweden's most hated man. A suspect's been arrested and now faces deportation to Denmark, the country from which he crossed into Sweden.
Meanwhile, in Denmark, a teenage girl is being prosecuted after using pepper spray to fight off a rapist near an asylum center. The 17-year-old told police she was targeted by an English-speaking man who knocked her to the ground and tried to take off her clothes. She managed to stop the attack using pepper spray, which is illegal to possess and use in Denmark. The rapist managed to escape, but the girl is now facing a fine herself. Online, many people have criticized the Danish government, writing it's insane to fine women for merely trying to protect themselves. And Danish blogger Jalla Tavakoli says women often don't report crimes out of fear of being prosecuted themselves.
Turkey's being accused of funding Islamic State in a blistering attack from Israel's defense minister, who claims Ankara is buying jihadi oil on the black market.
As you know, Islamic State enjoyed Turkish money for oil for a very, very long period of time. I hope that it will be ended.
Turkey strenuously denies all claims of conducting murky deals with the jihadists. The Israeli official's accusations came during a visit to Athens and were largely supported by his Greek counterpart. But Israel's Moshe Ya'atlon also blamed Turkish leaders for allowing terrorists to move across its borders.
Turkey allows jihadists to travel from Europe to Syria and Iraq, and then back to Europe, and to be part of Islamic State.
I repeated firm position of the United Nations that settlements are illegal under international law and threaten to destroy the two-state solution. After nearly 50 years of occupation, after decades of waiting for the fulfillment of the Oslo promises, Palestinians are losing hope. Young people especially are losing hope. They are angered by the stifling policies of the occupation.
Bad made those remarks in an address to the UN Committee on Palestinian Rights. He slammed Palestinian officials for failing to improve the people's lives during half a century of Israeli occupation. Baden warned that Palestinians are losing faith in their leaders for failing to stop Israeli settlements from expanding. The UN chief further described the resumption of dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians as the only way to end the decades-long occupation and establishment of a sovereign state of Palestine.
The United Nations is committed to working to create the conditions for the parties to return to meaningful negotiations. That is the one and only path to a just and lasting solution on end to the occupation that began in 1967, leading to a sovereign and independent state of Palestine. Living side by side.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has met with Pope Francis at the Vatican as part of his European tour. Rouhani called the visit a real pleasure. The pontiff thanked the Iranian president for the visit and hoped for peace in the Middle East.